It's one of the most sought after bourbons in the entire world. But the question is it actually good? Today we're doing a review of Blanton's Single Barrel. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So, this is a big one. This is a big review. Today we are digging into Blanton's Single Barrel. So this is my first bottle of Blanton's I've ever gotten my hands on. Gonna do a review of it for you guys, and really excited to dive in. In case you're not familiar, Blanton's is a product of Buffalo Trace Distillery, which has super high demand these days, one of the most well sought after distilleries in the world. All of their products are pretty difficult to find at this point, and Blanton's is no exception. In fact, it's sort of at the top of that list in terms of, actually released pretty widely, but super high demand for it and very, very difficult to get your hands on. So in terms of the story of this bottle, it's got some unique things going on for it. Back in the day, Colonel Blanton used to run the George T. Stagg Distillery, which eventually became Buffalo Trace. Under him, one of his colleagues was Elmer T. Lee. Elmer T. Lee works his way up, becomes the master distiller, is in charge of the whole operation, and as he's about to leave, he wants to create one final product. So he creates Blanton's in honor of Colonel Blanton, and it's the first ever single barrel bourbon. So instead of batching together many barrels to create one consistent product, Elmer T. Lee has the idea, let's just take a single barrel, bottle it, and give it to people and see what they think. And people go crazy for it. There's a lot of unique things. I think it only comes from Warehouse H over at Buffalo Trace. Again, single barrel. The bottling is absolutely gorgeous, so it's got this unique hand grenade shape. There's the horse on top with the rider. It kind of mirrors what a race would look like, and you can collect all, I think there's 8 letters, so this is an N. You can get the whole word Blanton spelled out, and if you send that in, I think you get something cool from Buffalo Trace, or they put your name on something. But basically, every single marketing gimmick or trick in the book is being used for Blanton's, and it has such wide appeal because of that. And of course, by and large, most people think the whiskey is pretty solid. Proof-wise, this is 93 proof. Every bottle of Blanton's is 93 proof. Mash bill on this is Buffalo Trace mash bill number 2, so undisclosed what the mash bill specifically is, but that's thought to be the high rye mash bill, so interested to dive into that. Price-wise, this is the real, kicker where we get into what Buffalo Trace, the debate always is this is a $65 MSRP. Very, very reasonable for a well thought of single barrel product, but what will you see it for in stores? Could be $100, could be $125, could be on secondary that you're seeing it for multiple hundreds of dollars. So this is one of those ones that people go a little bit crazy for in terms of pricing, and it's just a tater bottle for a lot of people because so many people are seeking it when a lot of people think it's not necessarily worth all the money. That's what we're here to evaluate today. What I paid for it was $70. I did have to wait in line at a store on a Saturday morning for about an hour to get it, so that tells you that, it's very well sought after. All right, all that preamble, more than enough, has given the whiskey some time to open up though, which is good. 2 quick things before we dive in. First, thank you. Just crossed 900 subscribers. Absolutely blown away by the support. Thank you, everybody. Second, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do. We're gonna do a really fun giveaway once we get to that point. All right, that's enough talking for me. Let's get into the whiskey. On the nose, Blanton's Single Barrel. Zesty, very zesty. Lots of orange and lemon for me. So surprisingly citrusy, that rye is really showing itself. Good vanilla. Touch of oak too. A cherry sweetness as well. Something darker, more like a barrel char. But overall, it's a very light and bright nose, which kind of matches what the color is. It's not super dark. It's more of a light amber kind of thing. But yeah, that rye really contributes a lot of citrus. There's a good vanilla note there and cherry, and then something darker like a barrel char coming through for me. Very pleasant overall and very inviting. Not much ethanol. Very, very solid. Let's dive into the palate. Cheers. Okay. Nice. I think a lot of what I got on the nose transferred over. At the center though, there's this like darker note of this potential barrel char and really nice brown sugar sitting in the middle of it. Wrapped around that is some of that orange citrus, more honey on the palate coming through, wrapping around it with some sweeter, lighter notes. Good vanilla there too. Cherry, which I get on a lot of Buffalo Trace products for sure. But again, that like brown sugar, darker note is sort of sitting at the center, which I really enjoy. I will say, mouthfeel wise, not super great. I think it's on the thinner side of things in terms of mouthfeel, and that contributed to a sense of it dying off pretty quickly. But we're gonna go back in for a second sip here, see if we can pick out some more flavors, get a little bit more into the meat and bones of this whiskey. Cheers, everybody. Yeah. Okay, so one thing I noticed on that sip is a little bit more of like a roasted corn note coming forward. Not youthful and grainy, but kind of like a darker roasted corn. Then really what takes over in this mid palate for me is like a creamsicle kind of note. It's just like creamy vanilla and good orange citrus. It does both notes really, really well, and there's a brown sugar that wraps around them, like if you just dipped a creamsicle in brown sugar. Really solid flavors. Again, I am noticing the mouthfeel, not particularly great, and it does die off a little bit quicker than I might like, but with that roasted corn, barrel char, touch of oak in the middle with some brown sugar, wrapped around with some honey, citrus, orange, and vanilla, I cannot complain about the flavor profile being presented. It's really, really delightful for sure. Again, the mouthfeel and the finish feel like the most lackluster piece here, so let's actually go in and evaluate that completely here with our third sip. Revisit the nose real quick. A little bit of that roasted corn coming through for me now, and a touch more brown sugar, so it's starting to give a little bit more of a darker roasty toasty note, but still have a lot of that orange citrus and vanilla going on. Cheers. All right, let me walk you through that experience here. So the very front palate was a little bit thin, but very good like honey and vanilla sweetness. Middle of the palate actually had this burst of like some of those darker roasted corn notes and then rye spice, which I think is kind of accumulated on my palate. I can feel more heat now. Good to see a little bit more heft. And then the back end was a lot of that like creamsicle note. So orange and vanilla mixed together, very creamy. Didn't stick around the longest. I feel like the front palate and the back end of the palate just lack slightly. It's not a huge deal. I think it's a really, really good whiskey, guys. I just think I understand the critique that a lot of people have that at 93 proof, you know, you wish it had a little bit more body to it. I think the back end for me could last a little bit longer and bring a little bit more flavor punch, and the front end could be a little bit more powerful as well. But in terms of what it's actually presenting, the flavor profile in this glass, it's really good. I mean, it's what Buffalo Trace does best, is just present really good whiskey. Honey, citrus like orange, plenty of vanilla, gives this creamsicle note, good brown sugar, roasted corn, and some barrel char at the center of it for me. Overall, super, super solid. It just makes me wonder, what does straight from the barrel, like high proof Blantons taste like? If you've tried that, let me know. But for sure, it's like, this is one of the most sought after bourbons in the world, and sitting at 93 proof, you can't help but be like, oh, I can see how much better this could be at like 105 or 107 or 110 or above. I mean, I like anything in that like 105 to 115 particularly, and would love to see what this is like at that. But in terms of what it presents and the flavors it presents, I really enjoy that creamsicle note. Like, that is a really, really awesome note to get on a whiskey. The brown sugar balances it out. Good honey. Everything it presents, I like. I just wish it was heftier. That's all. So, how do we wrap up this Blanton's review? I think 3 things that I take away from this. First of all, a beautiful bottle, great marketing by Buffalo Trace for sure, and just a wonderful presentation. Second of all, I'm super happy to have gotten one and not at all disappointed with the whiskey in the bottle, and really happy to review it for you guys. Third is that question of, is the demand really matching what's here in this bottle? Is the whiskey really that good? Probably people go a little bit too crazy for this one for sure. I mean, it's definitely not worth $200. I'm happy to pay $70 for it in terms of what I'm getting here and the prestige of this bottle, and the whiskey is really, really solid. I think what it begs the question is, there's a lot of other good stuff in that $70 range, and a lot of stuff you can get at either barrel proof or 115, and it's going to present this hefty, powerful experience. Blanton's not necessarily supposed to be that. If I could find this readily available all the time, I might, have this as a consistent daily sipper. But for me, it still begs that question. 93 proof. Would love to see it at 115 and try it and see what it's like, because I do think the flavors are super solid. It just leaves a little bit to be desired because it's a bit thinner and not as robust as it could be. All right, those are my full thoughts on Blanton's. As always, let me know in the comments below. This is one I want to have a conversation about, see what you guys think about Blanton's, what your experience has been with it. If you're hunting it, I would still say very solid whiskey. Don't let people tell you it sucks, because it doesn't suck in my opinion. It's very solid. It's just not worth crazy amounts of money and hype. But if you pay 65, 70, 75 bucks for it, I say go for it. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.